I'm going to give you an illustration. Sort of a little quiz. To make my point here about right division and how it works. What I'm looking for is a highway. In the United States, along the eastern seaboard states, a highway. Help me out here. I'm looking for a highway that goes north and south along the eastern seaboard states from Maine to Florida. I-95. Thank you. Is there another answer?
One.
US 1. What I just said is true about both those highways. It's a highway along the eastern seaboard states, goes from Maine to Florida, and there's two answers. And unless you rightly divide, you could get really confused about what highway you're on. Are you following? Things that are similar, listen, things that are similar are not the same. Otherwise they wouldn't be similar. Are you following me?
Similar implies differences.
Similar implies differences. The trouble that we experience when we study the Scripture is we're sloppy. That's not our own fault, obviously. You know, God blinds people, and everybody who taught us was sloppy. You know? And I read you some information about US 1, and I tell you it's I-95, and you'll say, of course it is. Yeah. Goes north and south on the, yes, good preaching. And it might not, it may be a lie. Because you know, and here's the cool thing. I don't even know what, I mean, well, I know why I thought of this illustration. Because it's God's plan, right? Well, I don't even know when the thought first came to me. And then, you know, then I've got to take this detour and spend time studying US 1 and I-95. Right? You know, and there are places. I went ahead and I got copied some pictures of road signs and stuff and looked at the maps. There are places where US 1 and I-95 share the same pavement. Wow. So when you're looking at that spot, you can say that's I-95. And you can say that's US 1. That doesn't mean they're the same. You'll see things in Paul's early epistles and things in Paul's later epistles, and they're on the same pavement. That doesn't mean they're the same. You'll see prophecies that say one thing, and another prophecy says another thing about two different highways, and they're the same pavement at that spot. The student who gets approved is the one who's rightly dividing. Not just about everybody divides. That's easy. You know. And if you just do it at your own will, whatever is easy for you, I want this to be different from that, then that's what you get. But we've got to make a difference where God makes a difference. So let me give you a couple examples of the differences between them. There are places where I-95 and US 1 share the same pavement. You know, business 1 is off, but the main US 1 is with 95. And then there's places where it's over 100 miles apart. I didn't know that until I looked into it. Then I had to stretch and, find out where it's 100 miles apart. And if you think they're the same, just because they meet on the pavement somewhere, and you don't rightly divide US 1 and I-95, there are situations that could be disastrous. if you were counting on US 1 to be I-95 and it wasn't, or vice versa. The cool thing also is that which highway is closer to the coast? I-95 or US 1?
US
Depends where you're talking about.
It depends on what state you're in.
Yeah.
In fact, I had in my mind, before I looked at it, that US 1 like rode the seaboard all the way up. Just, I shouldn't have not thought that, but in Florida, and we had a Floridian here who she knows it's on the coastal side. She knows US 1 is on the east side of 95. Not everywhere. In fact, that biggest difference between I-95 and US 1 is in Georgia and South Carolina. And that's where it becomes 100 miles difference. And guess where US 1 ended up? On the west side. Wow. And then some places they're just doing this number.
Yeah.
Right? Wow. Here's something else. Where are my notes when I need them?
You took a detour.
I took a detour. Oh, I was going to give you some really cool facts about them, but here we go. Okay. Oh, here we go. Yes. Here's two more differences between just prominent ones. Did you know that there's 31 years difference than I-95 and US 1 being laid out? 31-year difference. So when did I-95 begin? When did US 1 begin? When was it laid out? And if you confuse the two, you'll end up with a 31-year difference. US 1 was laid out in 1926, and I-95 was laid out in 1957. Also, the difference in the length between them is different. Even though both of them start in Maine and both of them end in Florida, one of them is 462 miles longer than the other one.
462 hours.
Because one of them goes to Miami and is done, and one of them goes to the Keys. US 1 goes all the way to the Keys. So if I lived in the Keys and I told you, and I assumed and you assumed that US 1 and I-95 were the same, and I said to you, get on the I-95 and take it to its end. I live right there. You'd be almost 500 miles away from me. Are you understanding? And this is what happens when people talk about stuff they don't know anything about in the scriptures, when it's not been correctly partitioned, when the word of truth is not rightly divided.